Lauren.
Welcome back to What Matters This Week. I'm Lauren Maloney. Robert Letovsky is joining me now from St. Michael's College, a business professor. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for inviting me.
You reminded me yesterday when we chatted that we were here 4 years ago talking
Precisely.
about a similar thing.
Right.
So politics, yes, but there's a political business link.
Right.
And you said to me that politicians are brands.
Right.
Help us understand that.
Well, to back in for a second, Lauren, as I said to you, I'm not a political science professor. I am not an expert on the future trajectory of the primaries or the election, but I do like to follow the primaries and the election from a business or marketing point of view. Mm-hmm. Marketing is one of my fields. And
sure.
I said to you, you have to look at politicians as brands. And the reason I say that is because if you think of the ways that people are going to engage with a politician, there's 3 ways. Let's start with the most important, but the one that involves the least effort by the individual, and that's voting. Obviously, the point of a campaign is to get you and I to vote for somebody, but voting is a pretty low impact involvement. You show up, you mark it, you don't even have to show up, you vote absentee. So let's leave that off the table. 2 other important ways that people interact with politicians: volunteering their time and or donating money. And to understand what motivates people to volunteer their time and or give money, you really have to think of politicians as brands.
People get invested.
Right. And people invest in brands, meaning they buy a brand, they stay loyal to a brand, they look into the brand, they'll stay connected to the brand for a range of reasons. Mm-hmm. And that's true about politicians too. But the important point, and here politicians are like brands, the most successful brands, Lauren, the ones that have the most loyal customers, the ones that have the most consistent years of profitability, are ones that offer people multiple reasons to be connected. And so you have like a pyramid. You can think of the sort of hierarchy of needs. At the bottom of the pyramid, you've got basic functional reasons. So let's take a car. People buy a car for different reasons: the price, the size, the fuel economy, the towing power, whatever. Sure, the quality. Those are important, but the really successful brands check a lot of those boxes and then move up the pyramid to more emotional connections. So we'll start with a social component. People affiliate with the brand because they want to be seen as being part of that brand. People who wear Under Armour to say, I'm athletic. People who will buy Patagonia to say, I'm out to save the world. It's sort of a badge value.
Okay.
And then you move up another step, and you have sort of I'll call it a life-changing opportunity. So people who affiliate with a brand because they want to be seen as part of a group. And that could be Red Sox Nation as an example. So
Patriots?
Right, there you are. And it's caps, it's T-shirts, it's bumper stickers. But it could be brands as well. So think of, Subaru, and they sell all this gear, and people want to be seen to be part of this type of network. So a lot of brands do this very successfully. At the very top, we'll call it self-actualization. And those of your viewers who are old enough to remember, it's not that long ago, the old Army tagline, be all you can be. Meaning, if you buy this brand and you wear it, use it, whatever, you really are the person you thought you were. So if you drive this luxury car, you really are the successful person you always said you were. If you wear this brand of outdoor gear,
it makes you feel a certain way.
You are the intrepid outdoors person you thought you were. And so brands can do that, but politicians have to do that.
Who falls into that category?
Well, I just want to interject one thing. There is one area where this analog breaks down, as I said to you. A brand can develop a nice little business being a niche product. Think of craft beer. Very lucrative with 0.5% of the market. No such thing as a niche politician. Politicians have to get 50.1% of their market. But other than that, let's take the people who are running in New Hampshire, for example, and think of the hierarchy. Any politician, the base functional reasons why someone would support and get involved with a politician from a functional point of view: one, they think they can win. No question for Democrats in this election cycle, can this person beat Donald Trump? Yes or no? That's an important functional feature. Another one might be someone who says, can this person deliver policies that will help me, my family, my financial standing, whether it's health insurance, taxes, whatever. That's fine. But to really get people committed, and here let's get back to how people commit to a politician. Who are you going to get to volunteer for you? To trampets through the snow in New Hampshire, waving signs, knocking on doors, personing an office, doing the phone banks, which is deadly boring, by the way. Mm-hmm. You have to have people who are emotionally connected to the campaign. So the next step up is who wants to be shown to be affiliated with you, to say, hey, look at me, look how virtuous I am. I'm affiliated with this, societal change agent called whoever. Up the ladder even further, someone who said, I want to be part of this group. Think of the expression Bernie Bros, which is actually not a pejorative, it's almost a compliment. Who wants to be part of that group, part of that crowd, part of that movement? And at the very top, self-actualization. And I'm reminded of when Ralph Nader ran for office a number of years ago, and we talked about this. He had volunteers. These people weren't naive. They knew he couldn't win, but they were out there knocking on doors for him because they felt this was their highest calling. And doing that for a candidate like that, that was realizing their true identity.
So people saying, I'm part of Bernie Sanders' revolution, right, that fits in.
That's it. And if you look at New Hampshire, look at the ground game, meaning look at the volunteers that Bernie has. Look ahead, whether we were talking Nevada, South Carolina, or the really big one, California. And anyone who knows anything about California, look how massive that place is. Mm-hmm. Think of all the ground that has to be covered in terms of door knocking, regional offices, phone banks, putting out signs. Unless you have, as in the case of Mayor Bloomberg, a ton of money to hire all that, you've got to have people who are volunteering. And it's only a candidate who can move up this sort of chain, this pyramid, and get people who are emotionally invested. It's only a candidate like that who's going to develop the ground game.
How many candidates like that right now running on the Democratic side are there?
Well, it's clear that Senator Sanders has this figured out, or his campaign has this figured out, and they've had that figured out since the 2016 cycle. I would say them. I'd say to a smaller extent, Mayor Buttigieg seems to have a core of people. I can definitively say I do not see that at all in the case of Vice President Biden. And as I said earlier, you either have to have emotionally connected people who will be your volunteers, or you have to have the cash to hire all those resources, and I don't think he has either. And I've yet to meet anyone who's emotionally vested in the Joe Biden campaign. I've yet to speak to anyone. I've not seen anyone who's done it.
You mentioned cash. We talk about money, and to you and I and everybody at home, $1 million is a lot of money.
Sure.
But how far does that go in a campaign?
Not at all. And in fact, you've got to consider this. You're running a campaign where you're buying last-minute airfare, you're walking in and you're doing last-minute office rentals. Even campaign staff, I'm talking the professionals, are really expensive. You're looking at some people who are working for $50,000 to several $100,000 per month. And then we get to the question of advertising, and you would be better placed than me to say, what do the media charge for advertising? You're burning through a lot of cash. So again, there's really, unless you are someone like Mayor Bloomberg or Tom Steyer.
He's put, Mayor Bloomberg, $375 million into ads already.
Right, but I don't think anyone's been talking about a Bloomberg ground game. Meaning, I don't see a bunch of people who are, quote, emotional.
Does money make up for that, though, Robert?
To an extent. I mean, for your professional staff, whether it's your social media people, your communications people, your campaign manager, yeah, that's fine. Your media buys. But again, the people who are going to be knocking on doors, speaking to their neighbors, holding a coffee clutch for you, doing a sine wave, those are typically volunteers. And for that, Lauren, you've got to stimulate some type of movement up this pyramid and get people emotionally connected. You've got to give them a reason. Brands do that. You think of the successful brands who do that. They don't just say, hey, look at our fuel economy, look at our warranty. They cast their message in a way that some people out there say, I want to be part of that.
Speaking of someone who probably has both brands, the literal meaning of brands, the president has his own brand.
Right, a master of branding. I mean, regardless of what one thinks of the president, his policies, whatever, give him this. He understands branding. A brand is a consistent promise.
Did that help him early on in his campaign 4 years ago?
Well, absolutely. And I think he realizes it ongoing. one of the essential elements of his political brand, not so much his persona beforehand, although to an extent the whole "you're fired" bit on Apprentice, is this notion of he fights. He fights no matter what. Even, I would say, to make a political statement, he's been combative at times when it has been counterproductive to his short-term political interests. But precisely because he's consistent, again, as we were talking about, a successful brand does not dilute itself. You're not going to see a $15,000 Lamborghini being sold anytime soon. You're not going to see Rolexes being sold for $24.99 at convenience stores. In the same way that brands don't dilute themselves, the president has figured out, even if it costs him in the short term, he will not deviate from his brand image.
Okay. What about brands on the flip side? What about brands who get behind a candidate?
Are you saying your commercial brands? Who
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Well, here is the thing. It's an interesting question because more and more, and started with the Nike Colin Kaepernick thing, most commercial products don't want to get into politics because they're worried about alienating some part of their customer base. But that's not true across the board. There are brands out there, so any brand that's strongly affiliated with environmental causes, for example, might indeed embrace a candidate who has made climate change their primary issue. So I realize that Jerry Greenfield and Ben Cohen are no longer actively running Ben & Jerry's, but there would be an example. There's a number of brands out there, their core values, and the reason they get people to commit with them emotionally is they say, you're not just buying our garments or our sporting goods or our food, you're helping to save the planet. Those brands could get away with affiliating with a candidate whose values and his image is consistent. Okay? That would work. But a general brand that hasn't taken that stand, they want to be very careful that they're not alienating. In a country that's pretty well divided equally, you don't want to alienate half your customer base.
Okay. Makes sense. It does. You enlightened us today. Appreciate it.
I hope.
Thank you, Robert, so much.
Thanks for inviting me.
We'll be right back on What Matters This Week.